Okay, so we're back to Mishlei 1532, and we only have half an hour. So one who loosens, that was like the kifaruahu, or right, thank you. And then or mavatel, that's how Mitzvah said it. Mavatel could be just in hashabasa or nullification. So one who loosens, stops, or nullifies Musar, which we said is either discipline or rebuke. Mois nafsho, despises or rejects his soul. V'shomea tochachas konei lev, but one who listens to rebuke acquires a heart or a mind. Let's put it that way, right? Heart or a mind. Okay, so our questions were, what is the decision-making scenario? This sounds obvious. There are a lot of psukim about ignoring tochacha and getting consequences. What does porea mean? How active or passive, conscious or unconscious is it? Also, why use the weird term? 4, what are musar and tochacha? Are they synonyms? 5, where's the musar come from? Is it being given by a person, or is this musar in general? 6, what does mois nafsho mean in this context? How is it the opposite of konei lev? 7, what does nefesh mean in this context? Does it mean he despises himself or his body / instincts, or his tzelem lakim, or something else? 8, what's the relationship between porei musar and mois nafsho? Which direction does it go? Is it that one who is porei musar is mois nafsho, or one who is mois nafsho is porei musar, or something else? Same thing for the second half. What does shomea mean? Listen, understand, heed. What does koneh mean in this context, and what does lev mean in this context? What does koneh lev mean, and how's it related to the previous pasuk? So the idea we came up with yesterday, which I still really like, is if porea is mavatel in the sense of negating the musar, saying that it doesn't apply to me. So the obvious idea is that you're going to fall into whatever consequences the particular musar was trying to steer you away from. But the other consequence that this is referring to here is you are, in order to jump through those hoops of rationalization, you're going to have to distort your mind somehow. You're gonna have to distort knowledge, either by saying that the idea doesn't apply to you and you're going to distort the idea, or I'm an exception to the rule, or messing with statistics in general. You're going to be distorting the idea. Yeah.
Your WhatsApp says Zoom only.
Oh, whoops. Sorry. All right. Thank you. Hopefully people figured it out. Yeah. That was from yesterday. Okay. And similarly with konei lev, in addition to getting the benefits of listening to the tochacha by heeding it, you are also, the process of subordinating your mind to the chachma in the musar is going to cultivate your intellectual development. And it does so in a intellectual way, but also in the idea, it does so in an experiential, practical, psychological way, but also the best way to see an idea that's practical is to see it in action. And the best way to see it in action is to see it in yourself. So by actually, again, this is no different than any other area of like practical technique. If you're, I don't know, you're doing like, in your job or in sports or whatever, you can get a principle, but until you implement it, it's not fully realized by the mind. Okay. So I think that was the idea from yesterday, which I think works out really well. Anything to add to that? Okay, then we saw Rabbeinu Yonah, who said that it has to, konei lev means konei middos, okay? And so the idea that I was trying to develop from the Rabbeinu Yonah there is, if you listen to tochacha in one area, it'll develop many middos. And the analogy that came to my mind, which I didn't say yesterday, is, again, I don't know how much this is like a Westerner's stereotype view of like Eastern culture, but let's say like in Japanese culture, whatever craft you focus on, whether it is tea ceremony, calligraphy, martial arts, Rabbi Sachs always talked about this, is like the idea is that you're perfecting one craft, but in the process of perfecting that one craft, you're perfecting many other middos and many other things. So you're really mastering craft in general, even though you're focusing on one specific craft. So I think there's an analogy here with middos that you are, anyone who's had the experience of getting tochacha in an area that you really needed tochacha, it's not just about that midah. The process of subordinating yourself to the musar or listening to the person who's rebuking you brings in a lot of other middos perfections. Yeah.
There's a great short little video I watched about the Simpsons, Homer Simpson, he couldn't sleep one night, so he got up early.
Yeah.
Went to work early.
Right.
Got parking early, got a few donuts early.
Yeah.
And it changes his entire life. He started becoming a better person because of it.
That's in Getting It Straight in the Rabbi Moskowitz Doug Taylor thing. I think that's the first entry of the proverb of early to bed, early to rise makes men healthy, wealthy, and wise. And the question that Rabbi Moskowitz asked on it is like, how does that make sense? You're just waking up early, but it drags in other middos. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, this is also, by the way, might be related to. I'm just going to throw this out here, not to focus on, but because we're in the season, might be related to the Darchei Tshuva in Perek Sheni of the Rambam. And I'm not holding in what the Rambam means by Darchei Tshuva. I know this is a question that we come up with every year. But after he says tshuva, after he says how to do tshuva, he says midarchei tshuva lios hashav tzoik tamid lifnei Hashem ubivchi v'sachanunim. So one of the ways of tshuva is that the person who did tshuva should cry out continually before Hashem with crying and supplication, v'osit tzedakah k'vi kocho, and do tzedakah according to his ability, u'misrachik harba min hadavar shechadabo, distance himself exceedingly from the thing he sinned in, u'mashane shemo, and change his name, klomar sh'ani acher v'eni oso ha'ish she'asa oso namasim, as if to say, I am a different person and I'm not the guy who did those actions. And here's the part, u'mashane ma'asav kulam l'tov l'derech yashara, change all of his actions to the good way and the upright path, right? Always strikes me as funny because like, yeah, it's very easy, do tshuva on this thing, and part of the doing tshuva is just completely perfect yourself, So I don't know exactly what this is in the Rambam. I haven't looked at it this year, but like you can see a thing where if you're working on one area, that is an opportunity to work on the other areas that are dragged in from that, and that can create like this symbiotic effect where it bolsters the tshuva that you did, but also like uses that tshuva as fuel to propel your momentum in other improvements, So I don't know, take that or leave it. Okay, now, I did not actually get a chance to prepare this because of delays and other unforeseen things. So I have not looked at the Mefarshim yet, okay? So let's just look at the usual suspects together, okay? We also did the Ralbag very briefly, right? Who said that that perfection of middos in general, mishu purim musar b'middos humo is nafsho. So if you reject musar of middos, you are rejecting your soul. Your soul cannot get perfection without this. Okay, I think soul there means your actual telem elokim. V'amna mishu shomea tochachos hu kone seichel ki hamusar hu haschalal hasakas hachachma. If you listen to Tochacha, you're going to acquire intelligence because Musar is the beginning of the acquisition of Chachma. And I think that might be why it says Kone Lev, because if you tell a guy who's into Chachma but not into Musar, that, if you reject Musar, you're going to be missing out on knowledge. So that's like a quantitative thing. But if you say you don't have a mind, and the only way to get a mind is to perfect your middos, that's like a more rhetorically powerful thing. So let's just talk. I know this is an old idea, but how is perfection of middos a necessary thing for perfection of intellect? Isaac, I don't know if you're answering that question or.
I was going to comment about that.
Yeah, sure.
I think it could start a very lively community discussion in the community chat. If you say you can't have
right yeah. Okay, anyone have any ideas though? Yeah, Sean.
Yeah, I'm kind of drawn to thinking about how the Rambam talks about the mitzvah of holik b'drachav, and that when a person has particular dispositions, so when they're presented with a particular reality, so they're pulled to one side or the other, right? And in terms of acting, in terms of and exercising a person's ability to react in terms of the appropriate reality of the situation. So if they are compelled to do one thing or another, so then they're not actually acting in a true response to whatever is happening.
Right. Okay, good. So what do we, just to support that, what does the Rambam call someone who is on the middle path? No. No.
Chacham?
He calls him a chacham. Okay, right? Now, you could say that is because one of the four meanings of chachma is perfection of middos. But my interpretation has been more along the lines of what Sean was saying, which is that in order to have, and I know I'm going to take a huge stance on what the middle path is here, my understanding is that it is where your emotions, like Sean said, your emotions not pulling you to one direction or the other, but you have absolute psychological fluidity, that that my favorite example is there's stingy and there's spendthrift, which means that you cannot think rationally about money. Whenever it comes to spending money, you're pulled into, I can't spend anything, or like, oh, I'm just going to use all my money. But frugal is the middle path, which means that you're able to save when rationality dictates saving, and you're able to spend when rationality dictates spending. So your chachma is able to be implemented in an unimpeded way, So yeah, I think that's a good, that's a good explanation for perfection of middos in relation to chachma, from the practical standpoint, which is fine. But I think Ralbag is saying that, like, let's say your ability to know science or metaphysics is also going to be impaired by your inability to have, by your lack of middos. So I just want to like bring that dimension out.
Meaning your ability to know science and metaphysics will create an inability to perfect the middos?
Opposite. Your lack of perfection in middos is going to inhibit your ability to be perfected in science and metaphysics. I mean, on a very simple level, yeah, go ahead, Dozen.
Well, I think in general, in deep areas like that, a lot of ideas are based on intuition, or
Yeah.
Or not.
Okay.
So if you have any emotional pull,
Right.
Your intuition is totally
okay, that's really good. Right. So in Mishlei, I'll just go from Mishlei. There's chachma, which is the first step, which usually in intellectual context refers to received knowledge. Tvuna is mevin davar mitoch davar, is being able to deduce or induce things. And then the highest level is, oh, does he say it here? Wait a minute. I can't do this. Hold on. I hate how it exactly blocks it. Okay. It's in Gimel, Das Kedoshim. There's a phrase that is used, Das Kedoshim, which Rabbeinu Yonah says means intuition in the areas that are like that are not as rooted in the facts, like where like the highest levels of intuition, and it's called Kedoshim because it is very far removed from the particulars. So what Ezra is saying is that in these high areas of science and metaphysics at the cutting edge, you're going based on intuition, and intuition could be subject to emotional influences. So if you haven't worked out your middos, it's going to lead you astray. And you could even argue that you're going to be worse off than the person who has a less perfected intellect, because if you have a very powerful intellect but very underdeveloped middos, you're going to lean entirely into your mind, thinking that your mind is being guided by the ideas, but really it's being set adrift by your emotions. So I think that's a good shot. And similarly, I think the easiest explanation is you're going to have blind spots. You're going to have spots that you are not going to want to accept certain conclusions, because of your emotional resistance, and you're going to think you're being intellectual, but really you're just you don't want to arrive at a certain conclusion because of the implications for your life. Yeah, Isaac and then Ariel.
Yeah, I think you see this a lot with scientists making very naive arguments about God.
Yeah.
Well, as if they came up with an argument that no one's ever
Right.
thought of before. Because
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, actually, yeah, I was gonna say, like, even historically, see all these scientists they couldn't develop their ideas further because they were so stuck in their own position and they couldn't accept the reality.
That's another thing. Okay, so I think that's a third point. Right. Third point is, so what we were saying so far is the imperfections in middos will block the knowledge. But what Ariel is saying is the process of thinking, like, no matter what area, like, let's say you could be arguing about metaphysics or about a Tosfos, let's say being overly attached to your own opinions, that stems from ego. Being unwilling to listen to your friend, that stems from ego. Like there's a lot of other laziness, right? The inability to tolerate immediate pain and conflict is going to affect your thinking process, where you're not going to be thorough. Greed or desire for kavod, which I guess is ego, is going to be it might cause you to skip steps. So in the actual Seder Halimud, or the process of learning, middos can interfere as well. Yeah. Okay. So I think these, I'm not saying that that's an exhaustive list, but I think that's a good sampling of why you need to perfect your middos first. And remember, you got to remember that in old school, not old school yeshiva, but in old school yeshiva with capital Y, they did not let someone into the base midrash if you had imperfected middos, right? Wait, well, I'm supposed to be in Talmud Torah. Just to read this again. Aim lamni divrei Torah elo l'tamid hagun, na'i b'masav olatam. We only teach divrei Torah to a Talmud who is proper, beautiful in his deeds, or a tam, which, to use Rabbi Moskowitz's definition of tam, evenly keeled, where you're not pulled in any extreme direction. About im haya holech b'derech lo tova, if he's walking on a bad path, machzir noso l'mutav, we bring him to the good, back to the good. Manhigin oso b'derech yeshara, and we accustom him to the upright path. Ubokin oso, and we test him, which always makes me wonder how did they test him? You know? Yeah, right. Well, I was thinking more of like entrapment, right? Yeah, put him in a situation and like try to bring out the bad middos and see how he reacts. And then we bring him into the midrash and we teach him, right? So we used to bar people from the base midrash if they didn't have good middos, you know? Yeah, Moshe?
Doesn't he specifically say in Hillchos Tשובה that you steer away from the place where you sin?
Yeah.
So why would you test someone if you're supposed to also?
Well, tshuva is not the same thing as perfection.
Oh, so so steering away comes at the end.
That's like, well, the steering, that's if you did an avera and you're doing tshuva on the avera, you know. But this is in the realm of Hilchos. Well, it's in Talmud Torah, but in Hilchos Deos. That I don't know if the two are like, if you could like equate the two. It's a good question, but I wouldn't equate the two. Yeah, yeah. Like for example, like if you're trying to cultivate, I don't know, patience as a teacher, right? We wouldn't say stay away from the classroom because you don't want to test your patience. Like, no, to the contrary, you should put yourself in situations. But if you, I don't know, if you, I don't know, whatever, did an avera, like you punch someone, right? So then maybe don't expose yourself to the person who you're going to punch. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Let's do other mafarshim here. Who do we want to go to? Because I didn't prepare this today. Should we check out our new candidate for being a friend? Immanuel Haromi. Yeah. Short one this time. Amar ki mishu katz umois b'musar. Someone who is disgusted, rejects and is disgusted by Mussar, sheyasruhu morav, that is given by his teachers. So this is not Mussar as a discipline. This is an instance of Mussar or like a channel of Mussar. Hu mois nafsho, he despises his soul. If he should be priyas hamusar yishaer ayir pere. I think that's a phrase from Eov. Let me see. Hold on, it's not ear, by the way. Am I right? Or is it in Yeshayahu? Those are probably the two places.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay, no. No. Eov. Ish nevuv levav v'ayir pere adam yivaled. Rabbi Moskowitz used to quote this in English. Man is born a wild donkey, I think is how he said it. Whoa, they changed? Oh, they got French now? That's a little annoying that I have to do 2 clicks, but whatever. An empty man will gain understanding when a wild donkey's colt is born a man. Okay, fine. So ayir pere, what does this say? Whatever, it's an animal, right? Yeah, wild donkey, right? Where are we now? So he will remain a wild donkey. Nimshal kabehemos nidmet. That's from Tehillim, right? He'll be likened to, that's from Mizmor Shir L'Bnei Korach, Yoshvei Chaled, right? You'll be like the silent animals, the mute animals, the dumb animals. V'yiful polim yischayv ha'onesh aleim, and you'll do actions that incur punishment. K'pi gdulas ha'chet bazeh, in accordance with this great chet. Bazeh uvaba, in this and other chatayim. V'nimsa shu b'maaseh hazeh poil polim ki'ilu sonen nafsho, and he'll do actions as though he hates his soul, right? So that's like the thing I said yesterday, like shooting yourself in the foot. If you say, why are you shooting yourself in the foot? No one wants to shoot themselves in the foot, but when they do actions that are self-destructive, you describe it as though they're intentionally shooting themselves in the foot. Oh, that's interesting also. Someone who listens with love, to the rebuke, that his rebukers rebuke him with, and he accepts upon himself to enact the tochacha, and he does then, okay, so what is he adding here? I mean, I think this is closer to the standard Perush, but is there a nuance here?
He accepts it with love, and then what? Like, what is that?
So then he'll do them, and then he's gonna get a lave, which is seichel. So he doesn't explain how you got seichel, right?
What's
yeah.
important about the fact he does it with love?
That's also true. Yeah, and where's he getting that from in the pasuk? Yeah, is it because it says lave? I mean, that'd be weird.
That with Tochachas Chaim in the previous pasuk?
What did it say about Tochachas Chaim? No, I don't think so. Right. Yeah, why would you have to accept it with love? It should be enough to just do it, right? Let's just say the first half. The first half is that you are going to end up not developing and harming yourself, right? So it's as if you're hating your soul. Yes, can you get that from, maybe it's like this, is the love is coming from, like, I wonder if the love is being used in the same way as the hate here, meaning that evidently, if you listen to tochacha, it's in your self-interest. So you are loving yourself. It doesn't mean that you have to love the tochacha, although I think that's what he sounds like he's saying.
The implicit opposite, no?
Say again?
Isn't it just the implicit opposite of hating yourself, like shooting yourself in the foot?
Right. You're loving yourself. Yeah, Ezra?
Maybe there's two types of people who accept tochacha.
Yeah.
One of them is somebody who really doesn't like it, but until actually they realize that it's good for them.
Yeah.
So despite the fact they don't like it, they accept it.
Yeah.
Then a person who emotionally cares more about professing himself than about the bad parts of tochacha, that he feels bad about himself
Yeah.
or whatever. And maybe he's saying only if emotionally you're on board with this whole approach and you're not just picking your mind over your emotions are going to be able to really further it to a level where you could accept, where you could be konolate.
Okay, that's a good approach also. Yeah. Could we maybe speculate about when he says seichel though? Because he kind of throws that in at the end, right? Which on the surface doesn't fit his approach, right? Like if you say moes nafsho means you're going to ruin your mind, so then the seichel is the opposite. But saying that you're going to do actions and incur onesh, but if you listen to tochacha, you get seichel, that's not really symmetrical.
Let's see.
Yeah. We also don't know how he learned seichel though, right? I mean, seichel can mean I think it can mean like prudence. Okay, like let me this is a weird way to have seichel, but let me just look at Rabbeinu Yonah on Musar Haskel, I think gives two interpretations of Musar Haskel. This is one of the purposes of Mishlei is Lakachas Musar Haskel. And Rabbeinu Yonah says, he's Lakachas Musar Haskel, Bir Initiata Hamusar, Kide Lakachas Musar, Lakichas Musar, Hukim Musar Befall, Leash middos, Ulhaniya, Malbim Musar, Musar Haskel, Kuma Musar Vihaskel. So the first interpretation is Musar Vihaskel. Kaderach Nofek Sapir Violam, the Inyan Haskel, Hahashgacha, the Iun Bechol Mase. So that's not intelligence, it's prudence or providence of your own, like watchfulness of your own actions.
Self-awareness?
Yeah, self-awareness, a little bit more. It's like you are monitoring all your actions. It's interesting. He says, "Vayhi miloshin vayhi David b'chol drachav maskil." That David was maskil in all of his ways.
What does Immanuel say on this? Rav Immanuel say on this?
Let's see. Perush Musar Haniskar Lamala Mipnei Shmilas Musar Kolelas Devarim Rabim Prat Mehem Katas Amar Musar Shemad Lazar Zalav Chitzark Ladato Kidei Lahavin Imrebina Hu Musar Haskel Klomer Hamusar V'Tikonomios Hamulim La'adam Peknos HaChachma V'Hasechel or V'Haskel. So he doesn't really define it. Yeah, so in other words, that might work. I mean, again, I'm mixing and matching here, but I wonder if in the same way as the person who ignores Musar is gonna do actions that incur onesh without him realizing it. That's the implication here, right? He's going to like stumble into actions that are harmful for himself. Then if you love tochacha, it's going to make you more vigilant about doing actions in a conscious, self-aware way. You know, it's a stretch, but yeah.
I don't see how love was something.
Well, the love is an interesting thing because if you don't love the Musar, you might, if you accept the Musar but don't love it, you'll do it reluctantly, you know, but if you actually view it as something that's beneficial, you will be looking for other opportunities to like implement the similar principles.
So this pasuk gimel over here, al gimel, that's the case where he's doing it reluctantly.
No, this would be the middleman, that there's the person who rejects all Musar on the one side, person who loves Musar, and then the person who begrudgingly follows Musar. You know, he doesn't hate it and he doesn't love it, but he implements it in the particular, you know, and like, again, just to use an example of teaching, because that's like where my head is at, is that, you know, you have let's say you have a new teacher who does a bad practice in teaching and you point it out to him, he might be like, all right, fine, I'll do it. But someone who loves Musar would be, oh, so like you're pointing out a certain flaw in the way that I'm thinking or in the way that I'm running my classroom, I want to know more about this, and like, how can I like improve this in other, like he's moving towards it instead of like just holding it at arm's length. Yeah, Moshe?
Is that an intellectual recognition? When a person loves Mussar, is that an intellectual recognition, or is it also an emotional recognition that and not just you recognize the goods, but like when you say love, like is that an intellectual or emotional?
I mean, I think it's emotional. Yeah. Like you realize this is for my benefit, and you're drawn to it. Everyone wants to benefit themselves, and you're linking that. Yeah, Isaac?
How does a person develop that love?
Mishlei. Yeah, honestly, Mishlei, it was two things. One is recognizing categorically that tochacha improves your life, or Mussar improves your life. But the other is ego, is working on your ego. That I think ego is the big obstacle to listening to tochacha, and there are many ways to work on ego. But I think like the practical way is the more you realize that tochacha is beneficial, the more you'll be willing to swallow the medicine in order to get those benefits. Because it's unpleasant. Like tochacha is unpleasant, at least on a minimal level. Let's do one more. Can we do the Malbim, even though he might be presupposing a definition of tochacha versus Mussar? Let's see. We are explaining the difference between the two. Mussar mafchid b'yiras ha'onesh. Mussar intimidates a person based on fear of punishment. She'ikarahu ba'onesh hanafshi l'olam haba, which essentially primarily is for olam haba. Umish porea Mussar eno chash al nafsho of dona. So someone who rejects Mussar does not care about his soul, and he'll lose it. And that's what it means. He rejects his soul. But tochachas hu havikuach mitzad haseichel. So tochachas is from the word vikuach, which is like proof or argument. That's from seichel, not from fear of punishment. Hachasar lev, someone who lacks a mind, hu mishein lo koach hamoshel klal. He has no self-restraint at all. V'hu kebehema she'oseh b'lo lev, like an animal that acts without restraint. Rakvi hamshachas hagufa taivos. He's just drawn after his body and his taivos. V'shazeh lo yikne lev. A guy like that will not acquire a heart, which is a faculty of self-control, al yidei pachad hamussar, through the intimidation of Mussar. Ki eno yodea klal ma tov ma ra. He doesn't know what's good or bad. Rak aide yisurim atzmam. He has to get the actual consequences. Kamosh kasuv v'shevet legiv chasar lev. A rod to the back of a person lacking a heart. Kapehema shenim shachas aide shevet, like an animal that is led through a rod. Aval im shomea tochachas az yavin bilvavo v'yikne lev shahaya chaser lo ad ata. But if he listens to tochacha, then he'll understand in his heart, and he'll acquire a lev that he was lacking, kakona davar miyad hamocher, like someone who buys something from a merchant. That's an interesting theory. So what he's saying is, if you have someone who does not have the faculty of self-control and he's like an animal, so then intimidating him through fear is not going to work. You only have two options: beat him, right, or like let him get the consequences, ownership consequences. Like he has to feel the pain, or it sounds like he's saying an ish like this you could reach through intellectual stuff. Is that what he's saying? He's talking to the same person. Then he'll understand with his heart, he'll understand with his mind, and then acquire the faculty of self-control. That's interesting. I mean, that really is Rabbi Moskowitz's approach, which is not fire and brimstone. That's not trying to intimidate someone through that. Is either, you get the consequences, or you reach the person through chachma. But it is very interesting about why you can't get a leiv through intimidation. Probably because, Rebbe makes this point on the parenting shiurim, but like if you have a kid who you're trying to get to daven, like, right, parents trying to get a kid to daven, and you punish him whenever he doesn't daven. So what's going to happen is he'll do the behavior until there's no punishment. Like if it's reliant on the actual punishment, but that also seems to stray into his territory of the punishment part. I don't know. It's an interesting theory.
So can you summarize that theory?
Yeah, he's saying that there's three ways to reach people: yisurin or onesh, intimidation through fear, and then intellectual tochacha. So the intimidation through fear could work with someone who has the capacity for self-control. But if someone lacks the capacity for self-control, then intimidation is not going to work. I guess because they can't do anything about it. You have to actually stop them through like pain, like actual pain. That's probably why. But it sounds like he's saying you could reach them through like vikuach haseichel and giving intelligent arguments. I just don't know how that can make them develop self-control. Yeah, I have to go now though. I'm sorry. So if you have more to say, then you can put it in the chat. Okay. All right. Well, good ideas in the puzzle, but yeah. I might have an idea for how I can extend the shiur by 10 minutes. Maybe if I set